The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with voices. Hundreds of alien species sat in their seats arguing about war and death. The ceiling stretched high above them, covered in stars that weren't real but looked beautiful anyway. At the back of the hall, in the shadows where nobody looked, sat Commander Day. He was human. One of the last ones left alive. Day sat very still. His face showed nothing, but his eyes watched everything. He had scars on his hands and more scars hidden under his uniform. His hair had gray in it, though he was only 40 years old. War did that to people. War made you old before your time. Next to him sat Hana. She was younger, maybe 25, with bright eyes that still held hope. She was human too, but different from Day. She had been born on a colony world after Earth died. She had never seen their home planet. She had never seen what humans could really do when they had to fight. "They're afraid," Hana whispered to him. Day said nothing. He just watched. At the center of the hall, Ambassador Rena stood up. She was Tilnari, which meant she looked like a huge insect standing on two legs. Her voice clicked when she spoke, but the translator made it sound smooth. "The Krillian Empire has destroyed 12 systems," Rena said. "They killed billions. Now they move toward the mining colonies at Tarthos Belt. We must decide what to do." A massive creature stood up next. His name was Gormath, and he was Verath. The Verath were warriors, proud and strong. They had blue skin like armor, and stood 8 feet tall. "The Verath will crush them," Gormath announced. "Our warriors have never lost a battle. We will show these Krillians what real strength means." Some of the council members made sounds of approval. Others stayed quiet. Everyone knew the Krillians were winning. Everyone knew they were dangerous, but nobody wanted to admit they were scared. Then Rena said something that made Day's jaw tighten. "We should have brought humans to this fight," someone suggested from the crowd. It was a small joke, barely worth noticing. Rena made a clicking sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans? The extinct species, please. The old stories say they were great warriors, but look what happened. They died in one war, all of them, gone in 3 years. If they were so strong, why did they lose? Why did they die so easily?" Day's hands formed fists, but he didn't move. Hana looked at him with worry in her eyes. "The human legends were just stories," Rena continued. "Probably made up by primitive people who didn't understand real combat. They had no natural armor, no enhanced strength. They were small and weak. The galaxy romanticized them, but the truth is simple. They weren't special." The council agreed with her. Most of them, anyway. They went back to talking about strategy, about sending the Verath warriors to fight the Krillians. Nobody asked Day what he thought. Nobody even looked at him. Humans were ghosts now, not important enough to consider. The meeting ended an hour later. Day stood up slowly, his body stiff from sitting too long. Hana followed him out of the hall and into the long corridor outside. The walls were made of something like crystal that glowed with soft light. "Day?" Hana said quietly. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer right away. They walked in silence for a while. Finally, they reached a window that looked out at the stars. Real stars this time, not fake ones. "Is it true?" Hana asked. "What she said about humans? Were we really that weak?" Day stared at the stars. Out there, somewhere, was the empty space where Earth used to be. He could still remember it. The blue oceans, the green continents, the cities full of people who laughed and loved and lived ordinary lives until the Krillians came. "They called us legends," Day said slowly, "because they never wanted to see us as anything else. Legends can't be real. Legends can't come back. It was easier to believe we were just stories." "But what's the truth?" Hana pressed. Day turned to look at her. His eyes were dark and deep, like they held too many memories. "The truth is that we fought for 3 years against an enemy that outnumbered us 1,000 to 1. The truth is that we held planets until every soldier was dead. The truth is that we made the Krillians afraid to land on human worlds because they knew we'd fight them in every building, every tunnel, every crater. We turned our own cities into traps. We used civilian ships as weapons. We refused to surrender even when surrender was the smart choice." His voice was quiet but hard like iron. The truth is that we lost because there were just too many of them. Not because we were weak. Not because we weren't good enough. We lost because you can't win when the odds are impossible, no matter how hard you fight. Hana looked at him with wide eyes. Then why do they say we were weak? Because, Day said, it's easier to forget us if they believe we were never that strong in the first place. It's easier to move on if they don't have to feel guilty about not helping us when we needed it. They stood there for a long moment. Then Day's communication device beeped. It was a message from the Council. The Varath warriors were leaving for Tarthos Belt in the morning. Commander Day's presence was not required. They thanked him for his time. Day deleted the message. What will you do? Hana asked. Day looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krillians were moving. Somewhere out there, people were about to die, the same way his friends had died, the same way Earth had died. I'm going back to my quarters, he said. I need to think. But Hana knew him well enough by now to hear what he wasn't saying. She saw something in his eyes, something old and dangerous, something that had been sleeping for a long time. You're planning something, she said. Day didn't deny it. He just started walking again, and Hana followed. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The galaxy thought humans were dead. The galaxy thought they were weak. The galaxy was about to learn the truth. Legends don't die. They just wait for the right moment to wake up. Day's quarters were small and plain. Most diplomats lived in fancy rooms with comfortable furniture and art on the walls. Day had a bed, a desk, and one chair. The only decoration was a photograph on the wall above his desk. Hana had seen it before, but she always looked at it when she came here. The photograph showed 12 people in military uniforms standing in front of a spacecraft. They were young and smiling. Day was one of them, but he looked so different. No scars, no gray hair. His eyes were bright instead of tired. The 7th Reconnaissance Battalion, Day said, seeing her look at the picture. We called ourselves the Ghosts. Where are they now? Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. Dead. Most of them. Maybe all of them, except me. Hana sat down on the edge of his bed. She wanted to give him space, but she also needed to understand. Tell me what really happened. Not the official story. The truth. Day stood by the window for a long time. Then he sat at his desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a bottle of something strong that humans drank when they wanted to forget. He poured a small amount into a cup but didn't drink it. He just held it. The Krillians came without warning, he began. They were expanding their empire. We were in the way. They sent messages demanding surrender. We refused, so they attacked. How many? Hana asked. Their first fleet had 5,000 ships. We had 300. We lost the space battle in 6 hours. Hana felt her stomach twist. She had heard numbers before, but hearing Day say them made them real. They thought it was over. Day continued. They thought we'd give up. But humans don't work that way. We don't have armor like the Varath. We don't have poison like the Tilnari. We don't have size or strength or any special abilities. But we have something else. What? Hana whispered. Stubbornness. Day finally drank from the cup. His face showed nothing, but his eyes looked far away. The Krillians landed on our colonies. They expected easy victories. Instead, they found nightmares. We fought them in the cities. When they took the cities, we fought them in the countryside. When they controlled the surface, we fought them from underground tunnels. We used mining equipment as weapons. We rigged buildings to explode. We made them pay for every meter of ground. The Ghosts, Day said, pointing at the photograph. We were scouts. Our job was to go behind enemy lines. We sabotaged supply ships. We stole their equipment. We learned how they thought, how they fought. Then we taught the other units how to beat them. And it worked? For a while. The Krillians expected to conquer us in months. It took them 3 years. 3 years of constant fighting. They lost millions of soldiers. They learned to fear landing on human worlds. Hana felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. But we still lost. Yes, because in the end, numbers matter. They had billions of soldiers. We had millions. They could replace their losses. We couldn't. Every human who died was someone who could never be replaced. Day stood up and walked back to the window. The final assault on Earth took 6 million lives in one day. Orbital bombardment. They just burned the planet from space. By then, we had evacuated most of the population to colony worlds. But it wasn't enough. The Krillians kept coming. What about you? Hana asked. How did you survive? Day was quiet for a very long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. My commanding officer was a woman named Yuna. She was the best soldier I ever knew. Smart, brave, never gave up. Near the end of the war, we were holding a spaceport. Civilian ships were evacuating refugees. The Krelians sent 10,000 warriors to take it. We had 32 soldiers. Hana's eyes went wide. 32 against 10,000? Yuna ordered me to get on one of the evacuation ships. I was wounded. She said I was more useful alive than dead. I argued with her. She pulled rank. Made it an order. Day's hands were shaking slightly. I got on the ship with the civilians. Yuna stayed with the other 31 soldiers. They held that spaceport for 14 hours. 14 hours against an army. Every ship got out. Every civilian escaped. None of the soldiers survived. The room was very quiet. Hana didn't know what to say. What could anyone say to that? I've lived for 50 years with that memory, Day said. 50 years wondering if I should have stayed. If I should have died with them. If I deserved to live when they didn't. Before Hana could respond, Dai's communication device beeped again. He looked at the message and his face changed. Became harder. More focused. What is it? Hana asked. News from Tarthos Belt. The Varath engaged the Krelians 2 hours ago. And? The Krelians have new weapons. Battle frames. Giant walking machines with pilots inside. The Varath are losing badly. The council is calling for full retreat. Day turned away from the window. He opened a locker that Hana had never seen him open before. Inside was old military equipment. A worn uniform. Combat boots. Other things she didn't recognize. What are you doing? Hana asked, though she already knew. There are people at Tarthos Belt, soldiers and civilians. The Krelians will kill all of them if someone doesn't do something. The council said retreat. They're sending rescue ships. The rescue ships are 4 days away. Those people don't have 4 days. Day pulled out a data pad and entered a long code from memory. A map appeared on the screen showing coordinates in deep space. What is that? Hana asked. A cache. A hidden storage facility. Only surviving Ghost Battalion members know where it is. He looked at her. I need a ship. A small one, fast. Can you help me? Hana stood up. Her heart was beating fast. You're going to Tarthos Belt. You're going to fight the Krelians. Yes. One man against an army again. Maybe not just one man. There are others. Other survivors. If they remember the cache location, they might come too. Hana thought about everything he had told her. About Yuna and the soldiers who died so others could live. About humans fighting impossible battles because it was the right thing to do. I'll help you get a ship, she said. But I'm coming with you. No, you're not a soldier. Neither are the civilians at Tarthos Belt, but they still need help. You need a co-pilot. You need someone to handle communications. Let me do this. Day studied her face. He saw determination there. The same kind he used to see in his old unit. All right, he said finally. But you follow my orders always. Yes, Commander. Day started packing equipment. Old gear that hadn't been used in decades. As he worked, Hana watched him and realized something. The tired, defeated man who sat in the back of council meetings was gone. This was someone different. This was Commander Day of the Ghost Battalion. This was the person the Krelians had learned to fear. Getting a ship was easier than Hana expected. She had access codes to the diplomatic hangar. At 3 in the morning, when most of the station was sleeping, she and Day walked through the empty corridors carrying bags of equipment. The ship they took was small, designed for carrying messages between worlds. It had 2 seats, a tiny cargo area, and engines built for speed rather than comfort. Perfect for what they needed. Will anyone chase us? Hana asked as they loaded their supplies. Eventually, but by the time they notice the ship is gone, we'll be too far away to catch. They left the station quietly. No alarms, no guards stopping them. Just 2 humans disappearing into the darkness of space. Once they were clear, Hana asked the question that had been bothering her. How do you know the other survivors will come? It's been 50 years. Day was checking the navigation computer. I don't know. But the cache was our emergency meeting point. If any of them are still alive, still remember what we were, they'll check it. Especially now, with Krelians attacking again. The journey took 2 days. Dai taught Hana things during that time. Not how to fight, but how to think. How to read a battlefield. How to turn disadvantages into advantages. Other species are stronger than us, he explained. faster, better equipped. So we never fight fair. We use the environment. We use surprise. We make them come to us on our terms. That sounds like cheating, Hana said. In war, there's no such thing as cheating. There's only winning and dying. They reached the cache location on the third day. It was hidden inside an asteroid field, far from any trade routes. An old mining station that had been abandoned decades ago. Day guided the ship through the rocks carefully. One wrong move would destroy them. The station was dark and cold. They put on suits and crossed from their ship to the airlock. Inside, emergency lights flickered on. Everything was covered in dust. This way, Day said, leading her through narrow corridors. They reached a sealed door. Day entered a code on the panel beside it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door hissed and opened slowly. The room beyond was full of equipment. Combat armor designed for human bodies. Weapons that looked simple but effective. Medical supplies. Communication gear. Everything the Ghost Battalion had stored here for emergencies. Day moved through the room like he was in a museum. He touched things carefully, remembering. Here, he said, picking up a rifle. This was Yuna's. She left it here before the final battle. Wanted to make sure it was safe. Then he found something else. A computer terminal in the corner. He turned it on and checked the logs. 4 messages, he said quietly. 4 survivors left coordinates. Hana looked over his shoulder. The first message was from someone named Tay. It said, still alive on Frontier Station Delta, still remember. The second was from Sung. Working as a freighter pilot now. Will come if needed. The third was from Quan. Thought I was the only one left. Good to know I was wrong. The fourth was from Mira. If you came here, you already know why. Day's hands were shaking slightly as he read the messages. They remembered. After all these years, they remembered. He sent out encrypted signals to all 4 coordinates. Then they waited. The first response came within an hour. Tay, on my way. 2 days. Then Sung, leaving now. Quan, finally something interesting to do. Mira didn't send words. Just coordinates confirming she was coming. Hana felt something strange in her chest. She had grown up thinking she was alone, that humans were scattered and broken, but here was proof that some still remembered what they were. What they could do. What do we do until they arrive? She asked. We prepare, Day said, and we learn what we're up against. He spent the next day monitoring communications from Tarthos Belt. The news was bad. The Verith had retreated to a single installation on the 7th moon. They were trapped there with 5,000 civilian workers. The Krillian fleet surrounded the moon completely. Orbital bombardment will begin in 3 days, Day said, unless someone disrupts their ground operation. How many Krillians? Approximately 50,000 ground troops, plus the battle frames, plus air support. Hana did the math in her head. Even with 5 of you, that's 10,000 to 1. I've seen worse odds, Day said. But his face showed he knew how impossible this was. The other survivors arrived over the next 2 days. Tay came first. He was older than Day, maybe 60, with gray hair and brown skin weathered by years on frontier worlds. He was missing his left arm below the elbow, replaced by a simple mechanical limb. Day, he said, gripping his old friend's hand. Thought I'd never see you again. Same, Day replied. How have you been? Alive, that's about all I can say. Sung arrived next. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands. She had been a combat medic during the war. Now she wore civilian clothes but carried a medical bag that looked military. You look terrible, she told Dai after hugging him. You look old, he replied with a slight smile. We're all old now. War does that. Quan was third. He was younger, maybe 40, with a cheerful face that seemed out of place. He was shorter than the others but moved with energy. Ghost Battalion reunion, he said happily. Never thought this would happen. What's the occasion? Please tell me we're not just here to reminisce. We're going to Tarthos Belt, Day said. Quan's smile got bigger. Oh good, I was hoping for something dangerous. Mira was the last to arrive. She was tall and thin with intense eyes that never stopped moving. She carried a long case that everyone knew held a sniper rifle. She didn't say much, just nodded at the others and found a place to sit. When they were all together, Dee explained the situation. He showed them the intelligence reports, the numbers, the odds. So we're going to die, Tay said calmly. Probably, Day agreed. I'm in, Sung said. Obviously, Quan added, Mira just checked her rifle and said nothing, which meant yes, Day looked at them all. These were the people he had fought beside 50 years ago. They were older now, scarred and worn by time, but they were still ghosts. We can't win this, he told them. We can't save everyone. But we can buy time. If we disrupt the Krillian ground operation, force them to commit to surface combat instead of orbital bombardment, the rescue fleet might arrive before they kill everyone. How long do we need to hold? Tay asked. 4 days. 4 days against 50,000. Sung smiled slightly. Just like old times. They spent the rest of the day planning. Not how to win, because winning was impossible, but how to survive long enough to matter. How to make the Krillians afraid again. As night fell on the station, the 5 veterans sat together in the dark. Hana watched them from the doorway. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. These were people who had already died once with Earth. Now they were choosing to fight again. She realized something then. The galaxy called humans weak. Called them extinct. Called them legends that never really existed. The galaxy was about to be reminded why that was wrong. The drop to Tarthos 7 was rough. They used stealth pods, small one-person capsules that were hard to detect. Hana stayed on the courier ship in orbit, monitoring communications and coordinating. The 5 ghosts fell through the atmosphere like meteors. Day's pod hit the ground in the Badlands, 15 kilometers from the mining installation. The impact jarred his bones, but his old training took over. He was out of the pod in seconds, rifle ready, scanning for threats. The moon's surface was rocky and dark. Tall formations of stone cast long shadows. Perfect terrain for what they needed to do. One by one, the other pods landed. Within 10 minutes, all 5 ghosts were together in a small crater. Just like training, Tay said, checking his weapon with one hand. Except we're old and everything hurts, Sung added. Speak for yourself, Quan said cheerfully. I feel great. Mira said nothing, already setting up her rifle on a rock formation that overlooked the valley below. Through the scope of her rifle, she could see the Krillian forward command post. It was massive, full of soldiers and equipment. Battle frames stood in rows like sleeping giants. Supply ships moved constantly. Target-rich environment, Mira said quietly. Day crouched beside her and looked through his own scope. He studied the enemy positions, looking for weaknesses. The Krillians were confident. Too confident. They had spread out, assuming there was no real threat on the ground. We hit the supply depot first, Day said. Quan, can you make it look like an accident? Quan grinned. Is that even a question? They split into teams. Mira stayed on the ridge as overwatch. Tay and Sung went east to scout the perimeter. Day and Quan moved toward the supply depot. Moving through enemy territory felt like coming home to Day. His body remembered how to do this. How to move without sound. How to use shadows. How to read the patrol patterns and slip between them. Beside him, Quan moved just as smoothly despite his cheerful personality. When they fought together 50 years ago, Quan had been the demolitions expert, the man who could turn anything into a bomb. They reached the supply depot just before dawn. Guards walked the perimeter, but they were bored and lazy. Why be alert when there was no threat? Quan studied the depot for 5 minutes. Then he nodded. See those fuel containers? And those ammunition crates? And that generator? Watch this. He pulled out simple tools from his pack. Not military explosives, just mining charges they had found in the cache. Over the next hour, he placed them carefully. Wired them together in ways that seemed random but weren't. When this goes, he whispered, it's going to be beautiful. They slipped away as the sun rose, joined the others back at the ridge. Mira had identified 3 officer positions. Sung had mapped the patrol routes. Tay had found where they kept their communication equipment. Ready? Tay asked. They all nodded. Quan pressed the detonator. The supply depot exploded like a small sun. The initial blast was huge, but then the fuel ignited. Then the ammunition. Then the generator overloaded. The entire depot became a chain reaction of destruction that lit up the dawn sky. Alarms blared across the Krillian camp. Soldiers ran in all directions, confused and scared. Mira fired once. A Krillian officer dropped 2 kilometers away. She fired again. Another officer fell. 3 more shots. 3 more officers dead. They can't see where she's shooting from, Tay observed. They think it's artillery. The Krillians tried to organize, but without their supplies and with their officers dying mysteriously, they were in chaos. Battle frames powered up and started moving. but they didn't know which direction to go. That's when Sung did something clever. She had medical training, but she also understood communication systems. She hacked into the Krillian network and started sending false orders. Units were told to move to positions where there was nothing. Commanders tried to contact each other but got wrong information. Confusion is a weapon, Day had always taught. A confused enemy makes mistakes. For 3 days, the 5 ghosts fought their war. Not direct combat, though there were moments of that too. Mostly they fought with fear and confusion. Quan destroyed 3 more supply points. Each explosion was different. Each looked like an accident or sabotage from within. Mira killed 27 officers and specialists. Never from the same position twice. The Krillians started to fear open spaces because death could come from anywhere. Sung saved lives too. She snuck into the mining installation and taught the Varath medics human trauma medicine, showed them techniques that worked when regular methods failed. Dozens of wounded warriors survived because of her. Tay fought 3 Krillian patrols in close combat. Despite having 1 arm, he was brutal and efficient. The few Krillians who survived reported fighting a ghost who couldn't be killed, and Day coordinated everything. He was the brain, always thinking 3 steps ahead. He turned the terrain into traps, made the Krillians afraid of shadows, forced them to waste resources chasing threats that weren't there. On the 3rd day, the Krillian commander, war leader Thexus, called his officers together. Hana was monitoring their communications from orbit and heard everything. "What are we fighting?" Thexus demanded. "Reports say minimal forces, but we've lost thousands of soldiers. Battle frames are destroyed by primitive explosives. Officers die from impossible distances. Our communications are compromised." "What is happening?" One officer spoke carefully. "The soldiers are saying it's humans, war leader." "Humans?" "Humans are extinct. Weak creatures who died easily. That's what we thought. But the tactics match their historical patterns. The psychological warfare, the sabotage, the refusal to fight directly." Thexus slammed his fist down. "I don't care what they are. Find them and kill them." He made a decision then that Day had been hoping for. Instead of bombarding the moon from orbit, Thexus committed his entire ground force to eliminating the guerrilla infestation, exactly what Day wanted. Now it was a ground fight. Now the Krillians had to come find them. On the 4th day, the 5 ghosts were exhausted. Sung had been treating her own wounds with field medicine. Mira was almost out of special ammunition. Quan had no proper explosives left, just improvised ones. Tay had taken shrapnel in his remaining arm. Day had cracked ribs and a concussion from a close call with a battle frame. But they had held. 4 days against an army. Hana's voice came through their communication devices. "Rescue fleet just entered the system. They'll be in bombardment range in 2 hours. Tay laughed, a tired sound. "We did it. We actually did it." Mira allowed herself a small smile. "Never doubted it." "Liar," Quan said, but he was smiling too. Sung looked at Day. "What now, Commander?" Day watched the Krillian camp through his scope. He saw Thexus, the war leader, climbing into his command ship. The Krillians realized they were trapped. They were preparing to retreat. But then Thexus made one final decision. If he couldn't win on the ground, he'd burn everything from orbit. Kill his own troops, kill the defenders, kill everyone. At least he wouldn't lose. The Krillian command ship's weapons powered up. Day made a decision. A dangerous one. "Maybe a stupid one, Hana," he said into his communicator. "Bring the courier ship down to my position. Right now." "What are you planning?" Hana asked, though her voice said she already knew. "Something crazy," Day replied. "Something human." The 5 ghosts looked at each other. They all knew what was coming. They had all survived by being smart and careful. But sometimes being smart wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to do something impossible. And humans had always been good at that. Hana brought the courier ship down fast. Too fast, really. But there was no time for careful flying. She landed in the Badlands where the 5 ghosts were waiting. The ship's landing gear touched the rocky ground hard enough to shake everyone's bones. Day was already moving before the ship fully settled. He climbed into the pilot seat while Hana moved to co-pilot. "What are you doing?" she asked, though she could see Quan loading something into the cargo bay. "The Krillian command ship is preparing to bombard from orbit," Day explained, his hands flying over the controls. "If they do that, everyone dies. The Varath, the civilians, everyone. So we stop them." Quan finished loading every remaining explosive they had into the cargo bay. He wired them together, creating one massive bomb. This should do it, he said, climbing out. Just fly this into something important. You're going to ram their command ship, Hana said. It wasn't a question. Not exactly, Day replied. I'm going to fly at them. Make them think I'm ramming them. Then at the last second I eject. The ship hits them on automatic navigation. Everyone thinks I did a heroic sacrifice. I'm actually just smart. Tay laughed from outside the ship. That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard. Thank you, Day said. Sung appeared at the door. Your ribs are cracked. You have a concussion. You might black out during the acceleration. Then Hana will take over. No, Sung said firmly. Hana stays here. I'm coming with you. Someone needs to keep you conscious long enough to eject. Day wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Fine. Mira had been quiet during all of this. Now she stepped forward and handed Day something. Her rifle, what's this for? Day asked. So you remember to come back, Mira said simply. I want that rifle back. Day took it carefully, nodded, no words needed. The 5 ghosts stood together one more time. Battle-worn, exhausted, old beyond their years. But still standing. Still fighting. If this doesn't work, Tay said. It will, Day interrupted. But if it doesn't, Tay continued, it's been an honor. The honor was ours, Day replied. Sung climbed into the co-pilot seat. Day sealed the ship. Hana joined the other 3 outside as the engines powered up. The little courier ship lifted off. It wasn't designed for combat. It was meant for carrying messages, not for flying into battle. But right now it was all they had. Day pushed the engines to maximum. The ship climbed through the atmosphere, shaking and complaining. Sung watched the monitors, ready to take over if Day passed out. You know, Sung said, we could both eject early. Let the ship hit them on automatic from here. I need to get close enough that they can't shoot it down, Day replied. They need to see a pilot. Need to think it's a real attack. That's the risky part. Everything about this is risky. They broke through the atmosphere. Stars appeared. And ahead of them, massive and threatening, was the Krillian fleet. Day opened communications on all frequencies. Every ship, every station, everyone would hear this. This is Commander Day of the Human Defense Corps, 7th Reconnaissance Battalion. You wanted to know if the legends were true. Here's your answer. He flew straight at the command ship. War Leader Thexus saw the small ship coming. At first he laughed. One tiny ship against his fleet? Meaningless. But then he saw the pilot was human. And then he remembered the reports. 4 days of impossible resistance. Ghosts that killed from nowhere. Humans who refused to die. Shoot it down. He ordered weapons fired. Energy beams cut through space. But Day flew like he had decades ago, dodging and weaving. The ship wasn't built for combat maneuvers. But Day made it dance anyway. Below on the moon's surface, Hana, Tay, Quan, and Mira watched on their scanners. He's getting close, Hana whispered. Come on. Old friend, Tay muttered. Inside the ship, alarms were screaming. They had taken hits. The shields were failing. Sung kept one hand on the controls, ready to take over. The other hand was on Day's shoulder, keeping him focused. Almost there, Day said through gritted teeth. 10 seconds. The command ship loomed ahead, massive and deadly. 5 seconds. Thexus realized what was happening. The ship was rigged to explode. This wasn't an attack. It was a suicide run. Evasive maneuvers, he screamed. But command ships are too big to move quickly. Eject, Dai yelled. He and Sung hit the ejection controls simultaneously. 2 escape pods shot out from the ship just as Day had planned. The courier ship, now empty but still flying on automatic, continued straight at the command ship. War Leader Thexus had one moment to understand that he had been outmaneuvered by humans. By extinct, weak humans who should have stayed dead. Then the ship hit the command ship's port engine. Quan's improvised bomb detonated with beautiful precision. The engine exploded. The explosion spread through the ship's systems. Secondary detonations rippled through the vessel. The command ship didn't destroy completely, but it was crippled, dead in space, its weapons offline, and War Leader Thexus was dead. The Krillian fleet fell into confusion. Their leader was gone. Their command structure was broken. They didn't know what to do. That's when the rescue fleet arrived. Galactic Council ships dropped out of hyperspace, weapons ready. The Krillians, already demoralized and leaderless, made the choice to retreat. They fled the system, leaving behind their ground troops. The battle was over. On the surface, the 4 ghosts watched as recovery ships moved to collect the escape pods. They didn't know if Day and Sung had survived. The ejection had been so close to the explosion. "Come on," Hana whispered. "Please." A recovery ship confirmed pickup of 2 escape pods. 2 life signs. Both alive. Quan let out a whoop. Tay sat down heavily on a rock. Mira allowed herself to smile. Hana cried, but they were good tears. 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened again in their great hall. This time it was different. The hall was packed. Every species wanted to be there. Commander Day stood in the center of the floor. He was bandaged and bruised, walking with a slight limp. But he was standing beside him stood the other 4 ghosts, all of them wounded. All of them exhausted. All of them alive. Ambassador Rena of the Tilnari stepped forward. She looked at Day for a long moment. The entire hall was silent. "I spoke wrongly about humans," she said. "I called them weak. I said the legends were exaggerated. I was wrong." She bowed slightly, which was not something that Tilnari did often. 5 soldiers did what 50,000 could not. Not because they were stronger. Not because they had better weapons. But because they refused to accept impossible odds. That is what it means to be human. The Council voted that day on several things. They established a memorial on Tarthos 7 for all human soldiers who fell during the War of Broken Stars. They allocated resources to find scattered human survivors across the galaxy. They offered support for rebuilding human colonies. Most importantly, they created a new position, humanity's voice, a seat on the Council reserved for humans. They offered it to Day. He politely declined. "I'm a soldier," he said, "not a politician. But I appreciate the gesture." As Day left the Council chambers, surrounded by his fellow ghosts and followed by Hana, reporters from dozens of species tried to ask questions. "Commander Day, what will you do now?" Day paused, looked at his friends, looked at the young woman who had helped him remember what humans could be. "There are other survivors out there," he said, "scattered across the galaxy. Some probably think they're alone. Some probably forgot what we were. I think I'll find them. Remind them." "Remind them of what?" a reporter asked. Day smiled slightly. "That legends don't die. They just wait for the right moment to wake up." 3 weeks later, a refitted ship left Council space. It was larger than a courier ship, but still modest. The name painted on the side read Ghost Protocol. Inside were 6 humans, 5 veterans who had fought impossible battles and lived, and 1 young woman who represented the future. They set course for the outer colonies, where the star charts showed human settlements that hadn't been contacted in decades. As they traveled through hyperspace, the 6 of them sat together in the common area. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. These were people who understood each other without words. Hana looked at them and felt something she hadn't felt before. Pride. Not in herself, but in being human. In being part of something that refused to quit. "What happens when we find them?" she asked. "The other survivors?" Day looked out at the stars streaming past. "We tell them they're not alone. We tell them about Earth, about the war, about what we lost and what we saved. We remind them that humanity didn't die, it just scattered. And then we see what comes next. Maybe we rebuild. Maybe we just survive. But whatever we do it together. That's what being human means. We don't give up on each other." Outside the ship, the galaxy stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there were humans who thought they were the last ones, who believed the legends were just stories. The ghosts were going to prove them wrong because legends don't die. They just wait for someone brave enough to make them real again. And humans had always been good at making impossible things happen.